Hello and welcome live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Gautam Roy, and coming up in the next hour, US President Joe Biden set to address the nation shortly after Donald Trump's election victory. The president-elect is reported to be preparing to put together his team and administration. European leaders attending a summit in Hungary hope to work with US President-elect Donald Trump on security and other transatlantic issues. India asks Canada to bring those involved in incidents of violence at Brampton to justice. Also tells Bangladesh to ensure the safety of Hindus and take strong measures against extremist elements. And Germany's president says that he is ready to dissolve the nation's parliament, paving the way for a snap election a day after Chancellor Scholz fires his finance minister, risking his coalition government. Well, first up, US President Joe Biden will be addressing the nation in just a short while from now, well within just a few minutes. This will be Biden's first speech after Donald Trump won the presidential elections, defeating Democrat Kamala Harris. The White House said that Biden will deliver the address at 1600 GMT, which is 21:30 IST, that's 9:30 p.m. Joe Biden also called Trump to congratulate the president-elect on his victory and invited him to the White House to discuss transitioning administrations. And earlier, in an emotional appeal, the Vice President and Democratic presidential nominee, Kamala Harris, urged her teary supporters to continue fighting for the values they hold dear, albeit peacefully. On Wednesday, she conceded the presidential election to Donald Trump. DD India's Shubhendu Ghosh got us this report from the ground.
While I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign.
US Vice President Kamala Harris delivered a passionate concession speech to her supporters and the nation on Wednesday after a whirlwind campaign that failed to stop Republican Donald Trump's return to the White House.
The outcome of this election is not what we wanted, not what we fought for, not what we voted for, but hear me when I say, the light of America's promise will always burn bright. As long as we never give up and as long as we keep fighting.
Hundreds of her supporters, many teary-eyed with the election debacle, gathered at Vice President's alma mater, Howard University, to witness her final speech of the election season.
Only when it is dark enough can you see the stars. I know many people feel like we are entering a dark time, but for the benefit of us all, I hope that is not the case. But here's the thing, America, if it is, let us fill the sky with the light of a brilliant, brilliant billion of stars. The light of optimism, of faith, of truth, and service.
I believe that she is a viable candidate for the presidency, was a viable candidate, And she held a lot of beliefs that a lot of us believe in, and a lot of beliefs that a lot of us didn't believe in. But at the end of the day, she was the best candidate. She was the best one to go forward.
I think the results are definitely a little disappointing, considering that I am a student here and I really did have high hopes for her to win. But we pivot. We have to find new ways to make a change within our system, whether or not we got the result that we wanted in the end. So I'm just curious to see how these next couple of months are going to go, and even the months leading after his inauguration.
Sometimes you're given everything. Sometimes it ain't earned in 2 months. She wasn't chosen. She was given.
Kamala Harris tried to give a good fight to Trump, having just over 100 days to campaign for the high-stakes elections. She prioritized women's reproductive rights as an issue in the elections. She was joined on stage by the second gentleman, Doug Imhoff. As Kamala Harris conceded the elections, she delivered a moving address to her supporters, asking them not to despair, urging them to unite and mobilize, and that some fights just take longer to win. With camera person Jayashankar, Shubhendu Ghosh for DT India in Washington, D.C.
Let me now take you across to my other colleague who's been covering the US elections and the culmination of it, or we can say that it's not really still culminated. Amritpal Singh joins me from Florida, where he's been staking out Mar-a-Lago, the second home of Donald Trump apart from New York. Amrit, how's it going over there? What are you hearing about the burden of expectations that weighs heavy on Donald Trump? How is that channeling his activities at the moment at Mar-a-Lago?
Let me tell you the personality of Donald Trump. There is no burden on him. Look at the victory speech, Gotham, that he gave. There was clear triumphalism evident there. Kamala Harris, on the other hand, in her concession speech was gracious, saying, don't despair, we'll work together towards making it an inclusive society. But Donald Trump is the man that he is, and there is triumphalism. What is happening at Mar-a-Lago right now is many of his supporters are there, especially his close circle, the team that he works with. There are people lobbying to get into his team. So his strategists are weighing all that, and most importantly, in the U.S. cabinet, in my opinion, the most important position is one of the Secretary of State and the other of the Secretary of Treasury. But here, right now, the biggest debate is around who will be the next Attorney General. Because Donald Trump has...
I thought the biggest debate would be around what would Elon Musk be doing.
Okay, Elon Musk, what we are hearing is, yes, Elon Musk, what we are hearing is could be hired as the chairman of the Efficiency Commission, and he could be suggesting to Donald Trump how to go about fixing the economy in sectors that are growing, especially emerging technologies. So a commission of efficiency is what we are hearing in the public domain. Of course, all that has to be get to know once it's officially announced, once he announces his team. But that's what the debate in the media networks here is, or in the political circles here is. On AG, why it's important? Because he's got cases against him. Though once he becomes president, presidential immunity kicks in. But he would want to see that in the judicial system he can get rid of the cases for good. So that is what's being hotly debated here, Gautam.
Yes, you're talking about the next Attorney General, and I'm surprised that Jack Smith hasn't put in his papers yet. But in terms of what he will do and how he will go about doing it, his promises, principally, one could sort of list them as top 10 or top 7 promises. Do you think that he will deliver? He has intention to deliver, as he promised. He's promised that he'll go after not just his opponents, but he'll go after a lot of people who are there in the country illegally. He will shut down or seal the border, and he will give tax breaks, and he will impose tariffs. Apart from doing so many other things, that has a lot of people around the world fairly jittery.
That's right. He's made a lot of promises, and tall ones at that. It will be interesting to see that how he affects them. You ask me, does he have the intention? Yes. Does he have the right atmosphere in terms of support from the Congress? Yes. He's won the House. He's just shy of the majority in the House. The Senate is already his. So, with the kind of mandate that he's got, if he really wishes to do, he can. And looks like he has the intention. But the thing is that is it possible to, say, carry out what he promises, the biggest mass deportation exercise in the world? According to the Homeland Security, there are about 11 million illegal immigrants in the country. And let me tell you, I traveled to, the places where they enter. I traveled to the ranches in Texas. While the white American, the Bible Belt says they have an issue with illegal immigrants, but I pointed to them on their farms. You have the Haitians, you have the Guyanese, you have the Latinos working. They cannot survive without those migrants. Look at the cabbies driving the cabs in New York. In Manhattan, my own driver here is a girl from Colombia. She's seeking political asylum here. She entered illegally. So this society requires those migrants to do their jobs. Donald Trump's rhetoric will have to rework that, because if he does affect that, United States of America has structural issues to deal with. Gautam.
Yes, it can be potentially chaotic, and nobody wants that. Thanks a lot for joining us for the moment, Amritpal Singh. Now, as Amrit said, it's already being reported that Donald Trump has gotten down to picking his next team to run the United States. His aides are said to be jockeying for prime posts. There's a lot of speculation around what role will tech billionaire Elon Musk play in his administration. And as far as speculations go, world leaders from allies like NATO and EU to rivals like China and Iran all seem to be calibrating how to navigate a second Trump presidency. The contrast couldn't be more stark. A Trump campaign statement about how the president-elect got an invitation from the incumbent Joe Biden to visit him at the White House for getting the transition process going. And an anti-Trump protest in Chicago outside the Trump International Hotel and Tower with slogans like "End the Trump era" even before his second term has begun. The return of Donald Trump to the Oval Office has brought up a broad spectrum of responses and possibilities which swing from euphoria to a sense of doom, with uncertainty firmly in the middle. Be it America's allies or rivals, circumspection is in the air, even as sources said that the president-elect has begun making moves to put together his team. Inauguration Day is still nearly 6 weeks away, but all concerned have started putting their ducks in a row. Reactions have come in thick and fast to the Don's second coming. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi was among the first world leaders to congratulate him on social media, and they also spoke over the phone, expressing willingness to take the extensive India-US ties forward. Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu, UK's Keir Starmer and other Five Eyes leaders, Italy's Giorgia Meloni, Hungarian Viktor Orban and a few others also gave diplomatic high fives to the incoming US Commander-in-Chief. The reactions of European allies meeting in Budapest were more measured and introspective, as Trump has often berated them for depending on the US for their security.
China, North Korea, Russia, and of course Iran. And this is more and more a threat not only to the European part of NATO, but also to the United States, because Russia is delivering the latest technology into North Korea in return for North Korean help with the war against Ukraine. And it is a threat not only to the European part of NATO, but also to the US mainland. So I look forward to sit down with Donald Trump to discuss how we can face these threats collectively.
La paix, Volodymyr vient de le dire.
There has been a strategic awakening among us Europeans, and we must embrace it. We cannot delegate our security to the Americans forever. I believe it's also important to send the message that we are now providers of security solutions.
Chinese President Xi Jinping has congratulated Trump, but his message was relatively more subdued compared to the one when Trump became president for the first time around. Trump's first term triggered the US-China trade and tech war, which is still on, and China would like to see the back of it.
It is hoped that the two sides will uphold the principles of mutual respect, peaceful coexistence and cooperation. Also, win-win results, strengthening dialogue and communication to properly manage differences and expand mutually beneficial cooperation. This will help in finding a correct way for China and the United States to get along in the new era so as to benefit the two countries and the world.
South Korea has also been at the receiving end of Trump's footing the security bill ire. Its President Yoon Suk-yeol had a 12-minute phone call with Trump.
We talked about having strong solidarity and partnership in the Asia-Pacific and global region based on the South Korea-US alliance. And first talked about not just talking about the North Korean nuclear program, as he may have an interest in North Korea.
Apart from promising to end the war in Ukraine, Trump has also said he'd get the West Asian conflict wrapped up. Iran said on Thursday that US elections are an opportunity to review the wrong approaches of the American government. Trump had initiated US oil sanctions against Iran in 2018 after exiting the nuclear pact between Tehran and global powers. The Hezbollah merely said that it welcomes any effort to stop the war in Lebanon, but does not pin its hopes for a ceasefire on a particular US administration. It added that it wants to see actions being taken, not just words. Gautam Roy, DD India. So it's almost everyone is holding their breath to see what Donald Trump does once he is in the Oval Office. And we'll be talking about this as well, the road ahead for the world once Donald Trump is in office in a short while from now with a special guest, with an expert guest, but still to come on DD India News Hour. An Israeli strike in Lebanon's Sidon damages UNIFIL convoy bus. Oil-rich Azerbaijan is all set to host UN's 29th Climate Conference of Parties, or COP29, from the 11th to the 22nd of this month. And Australia proposes a social media ban for children under the age of 16.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has said on Thursday that Russia's leadership remembered Donald Trump's words about trying to resolve the Ukraine crisis, even if he exaggerated the speed at which he could do it.
Propose something in order to solve the Ukrainian crisis, even before his inauguration. Of course, there was a little bit over-exaggeration that he would be able to do it overnight. Certainly there's nothing that can heal this problem overnight. Well, but at least if it's going to, new administration is going to look for peace, not for continuation of the war, it will be better.
Well, Putin has so far not congratulated Trump, but there is a feeler from the Kremlin that they could speak. Putin could call Trump or vice versa before Trump's inauguration. Now, a day of hectic political developments in Germany as the country faces political turmoil, a day after Chancellor Olaf Scholz sacked his dissident finance minister. The next report examines the contours and the magnitude of the political crisis Germany faces.
Germany is facing political turmoil on Thursday, a day after Chancellor Olaf Scholz sacked his dissident finance minister, ending the ruling three-party coalition. Scholz said that he is going to call a confidence vote by January 15 that will lead to elections by the end of March.
In the very first week of the parliamentary session in the new year, I will call for the confidence vote so that the Bundestag can then vote on it on January 15th. That way, parliamentarians can decide if they want to pave the way for a snap election. That election could then take place at the latest by the end of March.
But all major opposition parties are putting pressure on Scholz to seek a confidence vote now, paving the way for elections by January 2025.
There is absolutely no reason to wait until January of next year to ask for a vote of confidence. The traffic light coalition no longer has a majority in the German Bundestag.
According to the German constitution, a chancellor can seek a vote of confidence in the Bundestag to confirm whether they still have the support of the lower house of parliament. If the Chancellor fails to win the majority, then they can ask the President to dissolve the Parliament within 21 days. Elections must be held within 60 days.
The German Chancellor has declared that he will call a vote of confidence in the Bundestag. This is the way in which Parliament can pave the way for new elections.
But Scholz is already facing calls from the CDU-CSU alliance to hold a confidence vote immediately.
Das Richtige für unser Land wäre die
The right thing for our country would be an immediate confidence vote and new elections. In a democracy, nobody should be afraid of the voters.
But the coalition has long been facing bitter infighting on a wide range of issues, from immigration and climate to budget wars, as well as reviving the ailing economy. Months of discord finally came to a critical point after crunch talks at the Chancellery that ended in Scholz's surprise sacking of Lindner. Bureau Report, DD India.
Now we're shifting focus to West Asia as Israel conducted airstrikes on Hezbollah's main bastion in southern Beirut on Thursday, with one raid hitting an area near Lebanon's only international airport. The pre-dawn raids came after Hezbollah claimed a slew of attacks on Israel, including a missile strike targeting a military base near Israel's Ben Gurion International Airport. Lebanon's health ministry said that on Wednesday, Israeli strikes on the Bekaa Valley and the densely populated ancient city of Baalbek in East Lebanon, where Hezbollah holds sway, killed 40 people. French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot said Thursday in Jerusalem that he sees prospects for ending Israel's wars in Gaza and Lebanon after Donald Trump was elected U.S. president. Speaking alongside outgoing Israeli Foreign Minister Israel Katz, Barrot cited Trump's wish to see the end of the Middle East's endless wars, as well as Israel's recent tactical successes. His visit to the region was to press Israel to engage diplomatically to end the conflicts in Gaza and Lebanon.
Today, I came back to Jerusalem because I believe it has opened a perspective to put an end to the tragedy in which Israelis, Palestinians and the entire region have been immersed since October 7th. On the one hand, the very significant tactical successes obtained by Israel, and in particular the elimination of Yahya Sinwar, architect of this ignoble massacre, favor the end of the military operations. On the other hand, a new American president has been elected. He has never made a mystery of his wish to see the end of endless wars in the Middle East. The conditions seem to me therefore united to head in the coming weeks towards a diplomatic solution to the ongoing conflict.
Azerbaijan, an oil-rich country in Central Asia, will be hosting the UN's 29th Climate Conference of Parties, or COP29, from the 11th to the 22nd of this month, at a critical moment for multilateral efforts to address climate change. Delivering an agreement on increased climate financing is the key task for COP29 and for Azerbaijan in guiding the summit's negotiations. On the 14th of this month, Azerbaijan will announce the amount of funds it will allocate for green projects until 2030. Last year's COP28 in Dubai concluded with nearly 200 countries agreeing to shift away from fossil fuels, a consensus hailed by some as the beginning of the end of the fossil fuel era. The European Union's Copernicus Climate Change Service has declared that 2024 is almost certain to become the hottest year on record. The data released from Copernicus just before the COP29 climate summit in Azerbaijan underscores the urgency for international efforts to limit global warming and intensify climate action. The scientists said 2024 will also be the first year in which the planet is more than 1.5 degrees Celsius hotter than in 1850 to 1900 pre-industrial period, when humans began burning fossil fuels on an industrial scale. Carbon dioxide emissions from burning coal, oil and gas are the main cause of global warming. The year 2023 was also the warmest on record. In 2022, NASA warned that 9 years prior had been the warmest year since modern record keeping began in 1880. The rise in temperatures is already leading to more intense storms, heat waves, fires and extreme rainfall from Greece to Spain and from India to Japan. Meanwhile, global solar capacity has reached a record 2 terawatts of capacity, with more added in the last 2 years than the previous 68 combined. According to data from the sector's global industry group shared with Reuters, it showed that the Global Solar Council said that they give the fullest picture yet because they include small rooftop installations often left out of government data. After the 2 TW milestone was breached this quarter, global solar capacity has become enough to power around 92 million US households. The challenge now is to achieve 8 TW of installed solar power by 2030, which the data suggests is possible and would amount to more than half of the 11 TW of renewable capacity needed to achieve a UN goal set at climate talks in Dubai last year. To calculate the latest data, the Council with European Industry Group Solar Power Europe gathered deployment data from national solar associations and solar developers globally. Some 60% of the 2 TW deployed comes from ground-mounted solar farms, while rooftop solar projects make up 40% of the total. Hurricane Rafael has slammed into Cuba as a Category 3 storm before losing some strength as it passed over the island and entered the Gulf of Mexico. The hurricane, which caused power outages in multiple regions, is the 5th major hurricane of the year in the Atlantic and the strongest this late in the year since 2020. According to the US National Hurricane Center, Rafael is expected to bring storm surges, flash flooding and mudslides. Amid the outages, 9 provinces in the west and central Cuba, including capital Havana, have been placed on cyclone alert. Over 70,000 people have been evacuated from their homes. This is the second blow from a hurricane in Cuba in recent weeks. Hurricane Oscar walloped Cuba in late October, killing at least 7 people. The country's power grid had collapsed multiple times and millions were left without power for 4 days following a blackout. In response to Mozambican police attacks through tear gas and weapons to disperse demonstrators, hundreds of protesters torched tires in Maputo on Thursday. This is the biggest demonstration against last month's disputed elections, which killed at least 18 people in the police crackdown on protesters. The election results turned out to be in favor of the ruling party Frelimo. Opposition and civil society groups have said that the election was unfair as the results were altered. Now, Australia has joined the list of countries that have vowed to curb social media use by children through legislation, but in Australia's case, its policy is one of the most stringent in the world. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said the government would legislate for a ban on social media for children under 16, citing the risks to physical and mental health of children from excessive use.
Look at other people that go to your school and it's like a bit like, oh my god, I need to be like them, I need to post more, I need to get likes and stuff like that.
I get really irritated when I have more followers, but then I follow more people.
Australia has unveiled one of the world's strictest social media restrictions for children. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese announced that the government will introduce legislation banning social media use for children under 16 years of age.
Now, government's proposed age is 16. That decision was made in Cabinet on Monday. And that proposal will go to the National Cabinet meeting that I'm convening online, a virtual meeting tomorrow morning. The onus will be on, just to go through some of the details, the onus will be on social media platforms to demonstrate they are taking reasonable steps to prevent access. The onus won't be on parents or young people. There will be no penalties for users.
Australia is trialling an age verification system with the restriction potentially in place by the end of 2025. Albanese justified the move by citing concerns over social media's harmful effect on children's mental and physical health. The ban will apply to all children, regardless of parental consent or existing accounts. The new law will target major platforms like Instagram and Facebook, TikTok, X, which was formerly Twitter, and YouTube. Australia's policy places it at the forefront of global efforts to protect children online. While France proposed a similar ban for those under 15 years last year, with parental consent as a workaround, the US has for long required parental approval for children under 13 years of age. A similar bill is to be presented in the British Parliament, with main provisions including raising the age of internet adulthood from 13 to 16. If successful, Australia's approach could serve as a model for other countries trying to address the risks of social media for kids. Bureau Report, DD India.
And still to come on DD India News Hour. We'll be speaking with our expert guest about the road ahead for the world after the return of Donald Trump to the White House. And India celebrates Chhath Puja, also Indians in different pockets of the world.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, of course, we're keeping an eye out for the address from the White House by US President Joe Biden. He had said that he will start delivering it at 9:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time because there's going to be a change pretty soon. 20th of January is when Donald Trump will be inaugurated there because he's won a second term in a fairly resounding manner, beating Kamala Harris, who's already conceded the race. And now things will be, of course, elaborated upon how the transition will happen, perhaps by Joe Biden. But before that happens, let me quickly go across to our guest, Meera Shankar, former Indian ambassador to the US, joining us this evening. Good evening to you, Ms. Shankar. What do you make of this grand change that is taking place, and what does it mean, not just for the US, but for the entire world? Because what Donald Trump will do in the coming 4 years will be guided to a large extent by the kind of agenda that he has already been promising and elaborated upon domestically as well.
Well, first, I think it's good that there's a decisive verdict in the United States. A prolonged period of political uncertainty would have created global anxiety. So that is a good thing. I think the issues that President Trump raised resounded with the public, specifically, I think, the economy and illegal immigration. Now, Biden's handling of the economy has been fairly skillful. Growth rates have been 2.3% on average versus Donald Trump's 2.4%, so roughly the same. He created 16 million new jobs versus Trump's 6 million during the first 3 years of Trump's earlier presidency. And then, of course, there was a sharp fall for Trump during the pandemic. Also, real wages of those at the bottom of the pyramid have gone up. But because of high levels of inflation, this has not translated into a feel-good factor for the public. And that inflation was not just for a few months. It was for the first few years of Biden's presidency, touching a peak of 9% in 2022. It's come down. Today, it's about little over 2%. But the cumulative impact on price increases has made consumers unhappy. Because when they go to buy, let's say, a gallon of milk, they say, oh, today the price is this much. 4 years ago, I was paying that much. So the fact that inflation has come down is not something which they notice so much as the fact that over these 4 years, prices have gone up. Secondly, because of high inflation, the Federal Reserve had to increase interest rates to tame inflation. And these high interest rates meant that for those who had taken home loans, mortgage payments increased because interest rates went up. And for those who were first time, home buyers, the cost of buying a house also went up because the outgo on loans would have been higher. Plus, there was a housing shortage. So I think both these factors have weighed in on the general sense of dissatisfaction with the state of the economy. The other major issue was illegal immigration. And initially, I think the Biden administration signaled a somewhat easy policy on this. And then there were waves of illegal migrants who came in. They've tightened up, and in the last year or so, numbers have come down quite a bit and are more or less the average level. But again, the presence of so many people is something which Trump was able to actually tap in on during his campaign. And finally, of course, now I think one concern that could be there is that, it's such a sweeping victory because he's getting a majority in the Senate, is likely to get the House of Representatives as well. And you have a conservative Supreme Court. So the normal checks and balances which curb executive power in the United States may not operate in the manner that they normally do.
Yeah, so he has a trifecta
President
now,
Trump
or some people are saying he's got the perfecta. But do you think?
Hand.
Yes, but do you think that he will deliver on his promises? One is the ability to deliver on promises, and the other is the will to deliver on promises like tax cuts, like tariffs, that like ending the war in Ukraine and in the Middle East, like even the deportations.
Look, the deportations, I feel that it's easier to do deportations of those apprehended at the border by the border security forces, rounding up 11 million and more illegal immigrants who've been there in the US for some time and who provide the services which actually grease and run the US economy, from restaurants to gardening to all kinds of services.
Even garbage.
I think will be quite a turbulent process, because identifying them, rounding them up, and they will have recourse to legal action also. They can go to court. And then it'll require quite a lot of administrative expenditure and beefing up administrative capability to handle such a large number. So my sense is that he may take symbolic action, where there are visible camps of illegal immigrants in some of the cities. He may take action there to show that he is delivering. He will take action to complete the border wall and to beef up border security. If he really tries these mass deportations, it will not be easy, and it could lead to some internal turmoil.
Yes, let's talk about specifics on delivering on promises. Like, for instance, he said that he'll end the war in Ukraine. Now, some would say that that is the easiest thing to do: just turn off the tap, stop giving money, and all these arms to Ukraine. The US is the chief contributor to Ukraine's war effort. Just turn that off, and it's a done deal. Zelensky will be forced to sue for peace with Putin. But is it as easy as that? Can Trump really turn off the tap? Because people forget that in 2017, it was during the Trump presidency that the Americans started to help Ukraine. And at that time, this sort of conflict hadn't broken out. The problem was in Crimea.
Yes, but I would say that he will make an effort. He'll try to negotiate, and he will reduce the outgo of aid, particularly military aid to Ukraine. He'll have to also deal with his own party because many Republicans have supported the aid to Ukraine. So he will have to work out a consensus and will probably seek to commence negotiations. The other factor is Europe, because Europe is already using the interest rates from the frozen Russian assets of the Central Bank of Russia to actually provide aid to Ukraine. And this, I think, was an effort to Trump-proof their policy in the event that Donald Trump won the election and decided to squeeze Ukraine assistance, both military and economic, then Europe would still have the ability to continue to support Ukraine, of course, at a much lower level than before. But I think there will be negotiations, and if he does succeed in bringing about a ceasefire, a halt to the conflict, and you know that Putin has indicated that he's open to negotiations, he's always been open and so on, then it will reduce tensions in Europe, and it will certainly make it easier for India to navigate its independent relationships with the US and with Russia, which have been a cause of some unease in the Indo-US relationship
certainly,
under
even
the
now,
Biden administration.
Even now, although it is said that Donald Trump is positively disposed towards Putin, the Kremlin is very circumspect about what will happen next. The person, perhaps the world leader, who's perhaps most chuffed by the election of Donald Trump is Benjamin Netanyahu. But what do you think are the prospects for peace in the Middle East or West Asia, as we call it, now that Donald Trump is president? How can he deliver on that promise?
There are two things. One is that, we don't really know what he will do in the Middle East, except that he has been a very staunch supporter of Israel, having moved the US embassy to Jerusalem against traditional US policy. In this conflict, he has, when Biden was cautioning Israel not to attack Iran's nuclear facilities or oil installations, Trump made a public statement, but it's the nuclear facilities that Israel should attack because they are the source of the threat. Second statement he's made is Israel should finish it. Now, what that means, we really don't know. But given that he has a good equation with Netanyahu, given that Israel has already achieved, some of its strategic objectives, it's possible that Netanyahu may be more amenable to persuasion from Trump than he was to persuasion from Biden, particularly because he was holding out till the US election had finished. So it is possible that Netanyahu may be more amenable to, having a ceasefire, perhaps working out terms for ending the conflict. We have to wait and see.
Right. Let me ask you, Riya Shankar, also about India. How will the relationship with India be conducted? Because it's great when you look at the kind of mutual admiration that the two leaders have, Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi, for each other, and each have for the other's country as well. And there's a lot of cooperation going, a lot of things that didn't happen in the past, like tech transfer, the kind of defense cooperation that we have. That wasn't there earlier. But there are issues still that linger on, issues of trade. Donald Trump about Harley-Davidson and calling India tariff king as well. All those issues are still there. So how will this be taken forward? Because it is going to be a delicate issue, even the issue of visas, professional business visas.
Look, I think there could be friction on the trade front, but the overall India-US strategic relationship will continue to grow because there's a convergence of interest in the Indo-Pacific and about the challenge posed by an increasingly assertive and sometimes even aggressive China. So that is going to actually ensure that the strategic relationship goes forward. But there could be trade friction because President Trump has said he will impose 20% tariff across the board on all imports into the United States, which would cover India. He's called India Tariff King and said that there will be action. But of course, he's also said that he will impose much higher tariffs, so 50 to 60%, on all Chinese exports to the United States. If he does implement this, because, will he implement it across the board? Will he be selective? If he does implement these much higher tariffs on Chinese exports, they may also provide an opportunity to Indian businesses and companies to position themselves to benefit from the policy that Western businesses are following of de-risking from over-dependence on China and creating China plus one supply chains. There are other countries also who are positioned for this and who have benefited. So it's not automatic that it comes to India. It'll depend on how businesses view India in terms of an investment and business destination. Other countries are Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, Poland, Mexico. All of these countries could also be destinations for investment, but it is an opportunity which India should position itself to benefit from.
And certainly, I'm sure all will be done to ensure that we conduct our relationship to the best advantage of India and perhaps to the advantage of the US as well. Thank you so much for joining us and talking about it tonight, Meera Shankar. Right, we're still keeping an eye on what's happening in the White House because Joe Biden's supposed to step out and speak to the nation anytime now. But for the time being, we'll move ahead. India's External Affairs Minister, Dr. S. Jaishankar, visited Australia between the 3rd and the 7th of this month. Dr. Jaishankar attended a number of events during his 5-day visit. On Thursday, Dr. Jaishankar addressed CEOs and business leaders in Sydney. On the 6th of November, the External Affairs Minister called on Australia's Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. He also co-chaired the 15th Foreign Ministers Framework Dialogue with Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong the day before that in Canberra.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar visited Australia from 3rd to 7th November 2024. During this visit, Dr. Jaishankar attended a number of events. During his meetings with CEOs and business leaders in Sydney, the minister underlined the ongoing transformations in India in digital infrastructure, manufacturing and skilling.
We've done less than 150 days of the third term. But even in this period, we have made we've taken some very big calls. Among the calls which might be of interest to you, one is to set up 12 major industrial zones across India with a view to attracting global manufacturing and promoting domestic manufacturing. Secondly, to double down on the infrastructure spending because the infrastructure investments are still primarily driven by government spending. 3, a big focus on human resources development, on skills.
Dr. Jaishankar also met with Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese on November 6th in Canberra. They discussed ways to deepen the bilateral comprehensive strategic partnership between the two countries. On November 5th, Dr. Jaishankar co-chaired the 15th Foreign Ministers Framework Dialogue, or the FMFD, with Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong in Canberra. The leaders reviewed entire gamut of bilateral relations, including political and strategic, defense and security, trade and investments, education and mobility. At the Raisina Down Under 2024 session in Canberra, Dr. Jaishankar spoke about India's priorities in the Indo-Pacific and opportunities for greater collaboration with Australia and New Zealand. India's External Affairs Minister also inaugurated the Consulate General of India at Brisbane in Australia. The new consulate in Brisbane is India's fourth in Australia, alongside the existing consulates in Sydney, Melbourne and Perth. Fuzail Ahmed reporting for DD India.
India's Ministry of External Affairs has asked Bangladesh to act against extremist elements indulging in violence against the minority Hindu community and ensure their security.
We have observed that there have been recent attacks on Hindu community in Chittagong. Their properties have been looted, their business establishments have been looted, and these happened following incendiary posts on social media targeting Hindu religious organizations. It is understood that there are extremist elements who are behind such posts and such illegal criminal activities. This is bound to create further tensions in the community. We yet again urge the government of Bangladesh to take strong measures to ensure the safety of Hindus and to take action against extremist elements.
And India has also condemned an attack on a Hindu place of worship in the city of Brampton in Canada and urged that the country's government should uphold rule of law.
We condemned the attack on the temple in Brampton, and we also called upon the Canadian government to uphold rule of law and to bring to justice people who perpetrated the violence. We hope that the Canadian government will take due action.
India's President Draupadi Murmu visited India's indigenous aircraft carrier INS Vikrant on Thursday. This was a maiden visit to the ships of the Indian Navy at sea. During her visit, President Murmu highlighted the role of the Indian Navy in ensuring peace and stability in the region.
The Supreme Commander of India's Armed Forces, President Draupadi Murmu, embarked on India's indigenous aircraft carrier INS Vikrant at sea for the first time ever. President Draupadi Murmu was received by Naval Chief Admiral Dinesh Tripathi, and a 150-member ceremonial guard of honor was also paraded on her arrival. The President thereafter set board on the indigenous aircraft carrier INS Vikrant at sea off Goa, operating in the company of 15 frontline warships and submarines of the Indian Navy. This was President Draupadi Murmu's maiden visit to Indian Navy ships at sea. At the aircraft carrier, the President of India witnessed multi-dimensional combat capabilities of the Indian Navy. The President also interacted with the crew of INS Vikrant at lunch, which was followed by her address to the fleet. While interacting with the sailors of the Indian Navy, the President praised the Indian Navy for undertaking steps to ensure the safety of the country, as well as its role in maintaining peace in the region amid geopolitical turmoil.
India has a rich maritime history of over several thousand years. India's maritime might has got a significant boost with the induction and operationalization of the INS Vikrant, commissioning of India's second nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine INS Arighat, and the addition of the advanced frontline warship and cutting-edge naval infrastructure. I am happy to note that the Indian Navy is undertaking transformative steps with the adoption of Agnipath scheme and induction of women.
The Indian Naval Chief Admiral Dinesh Tripathi highlighted the transformative steps being taken by the Indian Navy to ensure peace in the region.
India is one of the only 6 nations in the world and the only non-P5 countries to build and operate both the SSBNs and aircraft carriers of its own. Honorable President, that the Indian Navy is a combat-ready, credible, cohesive and future-ready force, ready to protect, promote, pursue and preserve our national maritime interests anytime, anywhere, anyhow.
On INS Vikrant, President Draupadi Murmu witnessed several naval operations, including deck-based fighter jet takeoffs and landings, missile firing drips from a warship, submarine operations, flypasts of over 30 aircraft, marine commando operations, and culminating with traditional steam past of warships.
All right, now we're taking you across live to the U.S., where President Joe Biden is addressing the nation from the Rose Garden of the White House. Take a look.
Hi, Finn. How are you, honey? For over 200 years, America has carried on the greatest experiment in self-government in the history of the world. And that's not hyperbole, that's a fact. We're the people. The people vote and choose their own leaders, and they do it peacefully. And we're in a democracy. The will of the people always prevails. Yesterday, I spoke with President-elect Trump to congratulate him on his victory. And I assured him that I'd direct my entire administration to work with his team to ensure a peaceful and orderly transition. That's what the American people deserve. Yesterday, I also spoke with Vice President Harris. She's been a partner and a public servant. She ran an inspiring campaign, and everyone got to see something that I learned early on to respect so much, her character. She has a backbone like a ramrod. She has great character, true character. She gave her whole heart and effort, and she and her entire team should be proud of the campaign they ran. You know, the struggle for the soul of America, since our very founding, has always been an ongoing debate and still vital today. I know for some people, it's a time for victory, to state the obvious. For others, it's a time of loss. Campaigns are contests of competing visions. The country chooses one or the other. We accept the choice the country made. I've said many times, you can't love your country only when you win. You can't love your neighbor only when you agree. Something I hope we can do, no matter who you voted for, is see each other not as adversaries, but as fellow Americans. Bring down the temperature. I also hope we can lay to rest the question about the integrity of the American electoral system. It is honest, it is fair, and it is transparent. And it can be trusted, win or lose. I also hope we can restore the respect for all our election workers who busted their necks and took risks at the outset. We should thank them. Thank them for staffing voting sites, counting the votes, and protecting the very integrity of the election. Many of them are volunteers who do it simply out of love for their country. And as they did their duty as citizens, I will do my duty as president. I'll fulfill my oath, and I will honor the Constitution. On January 20th, we'll have a peaceful transfer of power here in America. To all our incredible staff, supporters, cabinet members, all the people who've been hanging out with me for the last 4 years, God love you, as my mother would say, thank you so much. You put so much into the past 4 years. I know it's a difficult time. You're hurting. I hear you and I see you. But don't forget all that we accomplished. It's been a historic presidency. Not because I'm president, because what we've done, what you've done. A presidency for all Americans. Much of the work we've done is already being felt by the American people, but the vast majority of it will not be felt over the next 10 years. We have legislation we passed that's just only now just really kicking in. We're going to see over $1 trillion worth of infrastructure work done, changing people's lives in rural communities and communities that are in real difficulty, because it takes time to get it done. And so much more it's going to take time, but it's there. The road ahead is clear, assuming we sustain it. There's so much we can get done and will get done based on the way the legislation was passed. And it's truly historic. You know, we're leaving behind the strongest economy in the world. I know people are still hurting. but things are changing rapidly. Together, we've changed America for the better. Now we have 74 days to finish the term, our term. Let's make every day count. That's the responsibility we have to the American people. Look, folks, you all know it in your lives. Setbacks are unavoidable, but giving up is unforgivable. Setbacks are unavoidable, but giving up is unforgivable. We all get knocked down. But the measure of our character, as my dad would say, is how quickly we get back up. Remember, a defeat does not mean we are defeated. We lost this battle. The America of your dreams is calling for you to get back up. That's the story of America.
There you heard, that's U.S. President Joe Biden addressing the nation from the Rose Garden outside the White House, giving a call once again, of course, saying that there will be a peaceful transition of power come the 20th of January when Donald Trump will be inaugurated. He said that he's spoken to Donald Trump. He's asked him over to come to the White House, invited him. He's also spoken with the person who ran against him, and he has said that she has a backbone and he's appreciated her as a partner and a public servant, and said that she ran an inspiring campaign. He talked about the loss as well. And he said that we've been defeated in one battle, but we cannot give up. So that was the sum and total of his speech, and we will keep reporting the latest to you from the US as well, because a lot of things are still unfolding, and we will bring you the latest as well. Right now, let's bring you the top stories at the moment. US President Joe Biden addresses the nation after the defeat of his vice president, says would ensure a peaceful transition. Also says must accept the choice that Americans made for competing US visions. European leaders attending a summit in Hungary hope to work with US President-elect Donald Trump on security and other transatlantic issues. India asks Canada to bring those involved in incidents of violence at Brampton to justice. Also tells Bangladesh to ensure the safety of Hindus and take strong measures against extremist elements. And Germany's president says that he's ready to dissolve the nation's parliament, paving the way for a snap election a day after Chancellor Olaf Scholz fired his finance minister, risking his coalition government. And that's all we have for this edition of DD India News Hour. But do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those on the go, you can get all the latest updates from India and across the world on DD India's mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS platforms. You can scan the QR code that has now appeared on the screen and download the app right away. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.